Hello, Apex. Hello, Apex.
So right behind this one is the one that is on task force, and right behind this one is the groups. Cat update.
Oh, yes. It's about 2 weeks to work on that.
How you get your so here's the last one, the cat, and if you can't find it where it is, down here, the first one.
Oh, what do I do? Go to the car.
And the cat update, yeah, that one.
All right, let me try.
Yeah.
So, close this.
Go down.
Close.
Oh, no, minimize it. Yeah.
All right. So what I do now is go eat.
Thank you.
All right.
We look forward
Go eat.
Yeah, well, we won't be doing
Then I want to do
that.
slide.
to, I don't know, you never know. You never know.
Well, listen, I won't be doing it. I get over it. That's not gonna be- I go
Yeah, we enjoy
to-
No, she's not in her current role, but because she continues.
Hello,
That's
Apex.
what she really loves to do.
She's definitely got a future in that.
Yeah.
That I would think.
Yeah, well, that's why I try to, show credit her so somebody sees it, they'll be like, yeah, I want to talk to this person.
Here.
Yeah, they're doing well. Yeah, they doing well.
Slideshow.
Yeah, but though.
Probably growing
Yeah,
up.
Mercy Rain. Yeah, Mercy Rain.
Second one.
Mercy Rain, yeah. So we have 7 races.
No problem. If you have any questions, I'll be in the whole. I'll come out.
So then she got a small dog, but the small dog is what they wanted in the beginning. Small dog.
Okay, you're good.
7 races. So this is still strange.
I know.
You got yours.
Is that something special?
No, this is from the senior center that we all got a pin. Remember that? You didn't get one? You should
I
have.
can't believe I know, so they were
Yeah, you should have one. You got one, right?
I got mine.
They probably just have yours over at I'll get Craig. They made one there. Oh, that is crazy.
Hello, Apex.
Yeah, they were confused. They were like, and which one do I work here? Yeah, I got color in this thing, man. What are you doing? Exactly. Oh man. Let's go, man.
Hey, looking for your trip, man.
That's right. That's right. Who am I meeting? See the whole thing where it's clear. You can come up and
Hello, Apex.
drop out. My kids will be super excited about this one. Great, thank you. Ed?
Good evening. Good, hey, good evening. How are you?
Not too shabby. Thanks for asking.
Well, I just flew in from Florida.
Really? Oh, that's right. You guys are at Disney.
Yes. Does that make it work trip? Oh, it was amazing. Yeah. It's kind of like a work trip and satisfy a promise made upon the reception of full today.
Oh, yeah.
So we were supposed to do this trip back in October. No, we were going to do it in December. But then the numbers went
Yeah.
so we were like,
Good time to what you guys think?
we stayed at the Cage Room, which is the DOD right? That's not a problem. Quite a nice thing. Quite a nice thing. Back in the 70s.
Hello, Apex.
80s. 80s Disney basically. You guys can do what you want. So it's one of 4 Armed Forces resort complexes.
When they got the buses running? The bus.
Well, you just, yeah, so they got a bus that runs and walk across. It's right near the Apollo.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I can't wait to go there. I took my youngest. What's the
Work your birthday 2 years ago now.
She loved it, but her sisters have just been through the,
Oh, I'm
through the
sure.
roof jealous.
Oh,
Like,
I'm
wait,
sure.
where do we get to
I
go?
was like, when did we get to go? When did we
Yeah.
get to go? It was like, February is the time to do it. It's not as hot, not as crowded. And I think just in terms of kind of like how to do this, that's definitely the way to do it.
My sister planned the whole thing for us.
The other side of it.
Yes, she knows all the places to go. I got ride science. I was just
Yes.
it was complicated.
It is not an easy thing.
Yeah,
There are
we
a lot
had
of
the
moving
resort days and the non-resort days, and then sometimes we were staying in like by the hotel in the pool, and then sometimes we went to.
There is an order and a battle that
It takes expertise.
the plan is
Yeah.
Hello, Apex.
one of those literally like momentary sort of things.
Oh, really? You just.
Feels like so long. Did you have a nice trip?
Oh, God, it was so
coordinator. There it is. Look at that.
Good evening. Glad you've joined us tonight. I will now call to order the Apex Town Council regular scheduled meeting for Tuesday, February 8, 2022, and I would like to acknowledge those who joined us live stream. We'll go ahead and move on with the event tonight, so we'll ask Councilwoman Cheryl Stallings to lead us off in our invocation.
Okay, yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. So I invite you to pray with me. Creator God of many names, we give thanks for this day and for this opportunity to be together as we make decisions on behalf of our town. We ask for wisdom and guidance as we work together for the good of our community. We give thanks for our mayor, town council, town employees and first responders, and our residents. We also give thanks for the joys and celebrations in our lives and for this opportunity in February when we pause to honor and celebrate Black History Month. We give thanks for the many African Americans, past and present, who have made and who continue to make significant positive contributions in our community, state, nation, and world. We also want to lift up those who may be struggling in various ways in our midst. We ask that you work through us and among us to be good neighbors to each other and to be good stewards of our resources. Help us to be the people in the community that you call us to be. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Councilwoman Stallings. If you're able, please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. All right, we'll move now to our presentations. The first presentation tonight is presentation of an update on the town's customer assistance program as of December 31st, 2021, presented tonight by Finance Director Vance Holloway.
Mayor, I'm gonna try to figure out how to. Here we go. I should hit help, but that's I want to get
Here's your help right here.
just hold on, sorry. Didn't get that the way I wanted. Oh, buddy, thank you. Sorry.
Okay.
I'll get it going here. All right, there you go. Oh, thank you. Apologize for the delay. Here for the quarterly update concerning the town's customer assistance program. This was established in April of 2021 by the town. As anticipated, a reinstatement of cutoffs that May, and awards began to be given out, applications taken, and awards began to be given out in late May and June of 2021. I'll run over where we stand right now with our delinquent accounts. Delinquent accounts, I want to make clear exactly what that is. Those are charges that are accounts that are behind for amounts that have been billed for 51 plus days. So in other words, they're in a position to be cut off at any time at that point in time. We have a grand total there of about $273,000 split between residential and commercial. Largest number of those accounts being residential, and the average 439, and the average residential balance being $596. We have 18 commercial accounts. Those balances, that average balance being a bit higher. When you look at the amount of these delinquent accounts, and you compare that to the revenues the town collected from the beginning of the period the moratorium on cutoffs was put in, which was March of 2020 until the current year, approximately an 18-month period. You're looking at through December 31. I'm sorry, that's approximately an 18-month, or actually would be a 20-month period, I believe. If you look at the cumulative revenues for that period of time, compare it to these the amount of these delinquent accounts, it's only 0.2% of that amount. So it represents a very small amount of the amounts that we billed and collected during that period. So look at our accounts with a payment plan. Number of customers who have got one established, 481. Of those, the great majority, almost 80% of those are current on those plans, representing over $300,000. The past due accounts, about 20%, representing a little over $135,000. Look at the average balances, as you would anticipate. The larger the balance, the more difficulty people are having making those payments. So the average balance there, $1,328, is higher than the accounts where folks are current. Also did a comparison of the payment plans, those that are current. The past due plans have been included in our past due amount already. If you take those those payment plans and the delinquent accounts, you add those two together, you see that is significantly less than the number of delinquent accounts we had at May 31, 2021, at the time the cutoff was put back, a cutoff moratorium was suspended. So that's significant. Also, the dollar amount's quite large. Unfortunately, I can't say to you that the full difference there has been collected. There have been accounts where folks have moved out, particularly renters, have moved out with a delinquent balance. And there have been some accounts that will be written off as a result of that. So that full difference there is not collected by, does not represent collections per se. It's difficult to know the exact breakdown between the two, but a good amount, dare say probably a majority, is in fact from collections. Look at our past due accounts, and again, past due accounts are accounts that have not been paid within 35 days of the bill being sent out. That amount as of December 31, 2021, we break that down by fund, compare that to the revenues, again, those cumulative revenues from March through December, March of 20 through December of 21. Compare those as an amount. The general fund, the services you have there, yard waste, garbage collection, things of that nature, usually much lower in dollar volume. Only represents about 1% of their charges, about $100,000. Almost $1 million in electric, represents a little over 1.3% of their revenues during that period of time. Water sewer, next largest, slightly over 400,000, and that represents about 1.13% of their revenues during that period. The total past due bills at December 31, $1.5 million, and again, that's about 1.24% of the revenues for that period of time. To compare that to where we stood on May 31st, 2021, prior to the moratorium on cutoffs being suspended, we have made a significant cut as a comparison to revenues and also the total amount outstanding. Our applications for assistance, went ahead and updated this information actually through January 20. The number of applicants, 234, number approved and have received assistance, 216. That represents about a 92% approval rate. That means we've had 18 applicants be denied. One applicant was denied because they were not a resident of Apex, and 17 were denied due to not meeting the income eligibility requirements. And again, that the bar is set at 200% of the poverty level. So they would have had an income over 200% of the poverty level based on their family size, and they were not eligible. If you look at the assistance given, a little over $100,000, 491, average of 491 per award. The awards were capped in the guidelines for the plan at $636 for each account. That was the maximum a person could receive. So we can say in really just a little over 7 months, well closer to 8 with the January numbers thrown in there, we've given out over $100,000 to more than 200 customers. So there certainly has been assistance given, no doubt about that. But again, 18 turndowns, the majority, again, just didn't meet the income thresholds. We look at our approvals by income level, and the numbers that are included there for a family of 4, those are the new 2022 poverty levels. And those are, I would say, up about 4.7% higher than they were at 2021. 139 of the 216 that have been approved, or 64%, almost 2/3, we're at 100% or less than the poverty level. The great majority are below the 150% level. In fact, people with 150% or less of the poverty level, that represents 194 applicants, or 90% of the awards have been given out to folks at 150% less or less of the poverty level. Where we stand as far as our available funds go, we set aside, the town set aside $509,000 for awards. Again, about a little over $106,000 of that has been awarded through January 20. So that represents about 21% of the amount available. Administrative fees, we do have a higher percentage, but still, less than half of that amount that was set aside. And altogether, between the awards and the eligibility determined funds, we've only expended 23% of the amount that was set aside, and we have just slightly under $425,000 of additional funds available for awards and administration. Can I answer any questions?
Are you still getting applications, Mr. Holloman? Do we have
Yes,
that
ma'am.
information?
Yes, ma'am. I don't think the pace is quite as strong as it had been earlier, but we still, in fact, are getting applications.
I have a couple questions if you
Yes.
don't mind. We can go back to, you talked about the write-offs. I'm curious if you could go into a little more detail about what our policy is when we actually will write off a utility balance of a customer. When does that happen? Is it annual? Is it when we can't contact them? And and as a related question, how does the utility write-off activity that you're seeing compare to prior years? Is there a spike in it, or is this kind of the level we usually see on an annual basis?
What we have discovered, and we have a period here a bit longer than we typically go, but what we have discovered is from March 1, 2020, let me start out again. Write-off will occur in a situation where a person has left the establishment. It's a renter, for the most part, very rarely anything else. But a renter has left, they had a delinquent balance. If they have a deposit, we apply the deposit to what they owe. And then the additional amount ultimately becomes bad debt. We make an effort to collect that debt. We have to go through various procedures. We have to make the person aware that we're going to do that as best we can, if we can find an address to send the information to. We then turn this over to collection agencies. One of the more successful efforts is the debt set-off program with the Department of Revenue and other governmental agencies. And if you can identify the individual, they will send their payments, will send money to us rather than, say, a tax return to an individual. They'll withhold money from that, things of that nature. And that is our attempts to collect. Also, it is reported to the credit bureaus. So there, in fact, is that impact on them. There are people who, when that occurs, they'll pay, because they know that that's interfering with their ability to get loans, to get credit cards, potentially to buy homes, things of that nature. So every effort we can make is made to collect the funds. We know, and we don't have this broken down exactly by months, because unfortunately once we start this process, we enter this information, the report we get off our computer software does not sort these by date. And this is from March 1, 2020 to September 1, 2021. So when you hear the amount, remember, it is an 18-month period of time. The number of accounts, this occurred, people moved out with a delinquent balance, and we've not been able to collect that balance. 1,533 such accounts. And the amount, $458,620. And that's through September 1. Now, the March 1 date's significant because, the federal law, as well as town action, prohibited any type of collection attempts, and that includes these various foreclosure attempts. So it wasn't until basically this summer we were in a position to begin to try to turn these people over to the credit bureau. So that's why that's such a prolonged period of time. Typically, it will run anywhere from 4 to 6 months that we do this, every 4 to 6 months. Ideally, we'd like to do it every month. It's just with everything going on in the office and with the additional work, the payment plans and the cutoffs being reinstated have created, it's difficult to do it on a monthly basis. But we had a huge catch-up period once the the cutoff and the collection procedures were put back into place. We do not know the breakdown of that between how many were in these delinquent numbers at May 31 and how many were not. So for instance, if someone were to say on April 1, if they were to move out, they have a delinquent balance, that is then excluded from the delinquent account number. The delinquent account numbers are active accounts, and they are amounts for active accounts only. They're not for these accounts that have been closed and the person's moved out. So what you're looking at, it's tough to know exactly how much of that money was in the May 31 number. If you assume it to be, say, on a straight line basis, I think that would indicate to you that that probably the great majority had been written off before May 31. However, or did occur prior to May 31 and were not included in those numbers. Probably only about 75 to 80,000 would have been left in about 255 accounts. If you assume a straight line between the various months, only that amount would have been included, say, in the May 31 number. So we are in the process now of turning these over to collection. So again, it's difficult to know if we compare where we are today to May 31. It's difficult to know exactly how much of that has been due to collection and how much of it has been due to these accounts being written off. But if you do it on a straight line basis, then you would conclude by far the great majority has in fact been due to collections.
Would you, you gave us some numbers of the amount of accounts you have delinquent, the amount of money that's owed to us. Could you characterize how close this is to the normal levels you would observe prior to the pandemic?
Yes, sir. We observed, we went back and compared this to two periods in 2019, two different periods in 2019 and up to March of 2020. We compared that. One period was for 4 months. During that 4-month period, approximately 123,000 was turned over for collection or delinquent accounts. That averages out to 24,600 a month. During a 6-month period prior to that, May through October of 2019, 119,000 during that 6-month period. So that was down to just under 20,000 a month as an average. When we look at the current numbers, we discussed tonight for the March 1 to the September 1, 21 numbers, that averages out to $25,479 a month. So it is an increase, not that dramatic of an increase of what we saw just prior to March 20, not that dramatic. But yet, if you compared it back again to the May through October period, it is approximately 20,000 versus 25,000. So that really is, I think it's somewhat seasonal. Also, we looked at those numbers and compared to our our percentages. Say, for instance, the amounts being written off. When you throw those in, we go back to this account, to this slide where we showed you the 0.22%. If you throw those written off accounts in there, in addition to the currently delinquent accounts, together that would have accounted for approximately 0.6% of the total revenues during the period. So again, we're talking, certainly it's a lot of money, and we are going to do everything we possibly can to collect it. But at the same time, it has not created cash flow difficulties. It has not, put us in a bad position. It's not as if it's 458 additional thousand beyond normal. It's either, depending on the comparison period, either just maybe 5 to 20% more, I think.
Yeah, I mean, to put it another way, we're collecting 99.4% of dollars billed.
Yes,
right?
sir.
That seems pretty good.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I actually have a bunch more questions if you guys like. I don't want to monopolize the discussion, but I do think this is important. I was curious, is there an opportunity for us to use some federal COVID relief funds to either backfill the money we spent on this program or fund it going forward?
Well, I believe that we are. I think we're going to have a meeting in a few weeks to look at that, and I can ask the staff who has been working with that to attempt to see if that's one of the allowable uses.
All right,
Yes, sir.
fair enough. I was concerned about the overall awareness of the program because I noted you mentioned we have 234 applications. We have, I think the number was 439 delinquent accounts. How can we be sure that the delinquent accounts know about this program and about their potential eligibility before we go and turn off their water?
Their past due notice, which has to be sent to them before we can legally go out and cut them off, that past due notice does not per se describe this program in detail. There's simply not enough space on that to do it. However, it does say, are you having trouble paying your bills? You may be able to get assistance, and it references our website, where information is placed on our website about this program and several other programs. So they do get a notice that has a web address where to go and find out about. Yes, sir.
Okay, I hope we can make that language pretty strong because I would hate to think we got people who are getting their water or their electricity turned off just because they didn't know that they were eligible. That's kind of tragic. We have this program here, there's funds available. So
Yes, sir. I
anything we
think
can do.
we've done all we could to try to make people aware of it. And I believe there was, in fact, one billing notice where we did actually maybe try to go into a bit more detail and include that when the program was first established. And then again, every time someone's delinquent and eligible to be cut off, they get a notice, and then within that notice, it says, are you having trouble paying your bills? Go to this location, and that's the location on our website that describes this and other programs.
Okay, that's something, but I'll just point out there's a level of indirection there. Like the letter doesn't say we have a program that can pay your bill. It says go to this website, and the website says that. So it, I guess.
Well, I believe the wording is, and Sean may know for sure the wording better than I do, but it says you may be able to get assistance.
Okay.
I believe that wording is in there,
All right.
within the notice.
Last question, and thanks for dealing with me here. I forget where we landed about non-Apex utility customers that are in town limits. Are they eligible? Like do customers in the small pockets we have?
We have not included them in this program. If they're not our customers, as far as verification of amounts and things of that nature, I think those people have had other sources. I think Wake County's run programs to assist people with utilities, and that would be folks who are not, not part of our customer base.
Okay. To your knowledge, have we had any applications from those? I know there's only a few in Apex, but.
Now you're referring to people who live within the town, but they get Duke Power.
Yes, I understand there's a small set of our citizens are still in.
We really wouldn't be involved in that process because the confirmation of their bills would come from the Duke Power. So we wouldn't be involved with that process. We have no way of knowing.
Okay.
They would be going to Duke Power. If someone were coming to us and that does occasionally happen, that does happen with programs with Western Wake, not just this program, but they have other programs, other groups help. They do come to us. If we are a customer of Apex, they come to us and get that account information from us, that verification of what's owed and what's needed to be paid to avoid cutoff. That does come from us, but for Duke Power, we wouldn't have any way of knowing.
But if they're past due their water, are there any people in Apex that only have Duke and anything to do with Apex utilities? Because that probably didn't exist, right?
There are areas within the town. It's interesting, if you look at the total number of, say, electric customers versus water, the electric customer numbers are greater. That's predominantly due to people in apartments. If you remember back when you lived in an apartment, your landlord wouldn't bill you for water sewer, they'd bill you for electric. However, there are also areas within the town that the town is now expanding to that are served by Duke for power, but they get their water from us. So if they were getting assistance to, say, pay their water bill, we would know that, but we would not know about the power bill.
All right. Well, just, I have no more questions. I just want to thank you for all your work and everyone at Western White Credit Ministry for the work on this program. I think this is an important program that has helped our citizens kind of work through the pandemic, and I'm really proud that we're doing it, and thank you for all your effort on it.
Thank you, sir.
I'd like to follow up, Mr. Holloman, if you don't mind, from something Councilman Happy said. Just thinking out loud about barriers maybe to why maybe people haven't reached out about the program. Did you all think about including a phone number on that mailing insert? I know staff are stretched thin, but at the same time, we are here to try to provide services to our residents. Was there any consideration of that?
Well, we did not, I believe the customer service number, overall number is included.
Okay.
However, another thing I'll mention too, and I failed to mention earlier, say if we are on a phone with someone who has a past due account, we tell them about it. You know, if they come into the office with a past due account, we tell them about it. So we are making efforts beyond just that termination notice when we do come in contact with the person, either by phone or in office visits. We do tell them at that time about the program, face to face or voice to voice. So it's not simply that notice and that's it. And I do believe we did a mailer when this initially got going. We did a mailer trying to make people aware of it also.
Thank you.
And then I would add Spanish language letters and the website. Someone may not, they don't speak English.
Yes, sir. We'll note that. There is a limited space on that, but we will note that.
Ms. Holloman, I just have one question too.
Yes, sir.
I guess to help out customers, as we have seen with the pandemic, the U.S. mail, and I love U.S. mail, by the way, but things have been really slow. Have there been any adjustments made for cutoff letters to make sure people have enough time to pay by the time they receive those letters?
Well, we do a fairly, if you compare us to other municipalities nearby, we do have, I believe only Cary is longer than us as far as from the date you get your bill to the date you get cut off. Best case scenario, that's 51 days. Occasionally it will stretch a bit longer, a few days longer. Cary's at 55. A number of others are in the 20s, 30s. I think there's only one there's only one in the 40s. So I mean, we are among the longest, you know, for that. So we do believe there is a good period of time in there, and we make every effort. Also, our staff is available, you know, to answer the billing questions. There is you can through the internet access your account. Potentially, not everyone has that capability. But that information is also available over the internet for people who have established accounts, you know, controlled by password. Not everyone can just go in and see, but we do have that capacity too. So we've made every effort with this program and the way we've administered cutoffs and payment plans and things of that nature. I think we're trying to do as much as we feel we can to. It's no fun to, you know, cut some. Well, we will if we are, you know, we're in the position we have to, but we try to work with people as much as we can.
And we thank you for that, as Councilman Happy said.
Try to help them.
One question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it possible for any when we send out a past due notice or delinquent notice to anyone to include a extra flyer in that notice with this program detail information, so they don't have to go to a physical website?
We can certainly work on that. I'll note that as something to look into. I will look into that. Yes, ma'am.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Holloman? All right. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. And I did include in your materials the updated 2022 poverty levels.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Holloman.
Thank you so much. I just want to remind those who are here, I didn't present in my earlier remarks, if you're here tonight to speak on public forum, you can make your way to my right here and sign up on the appropriate sheet so we can recognize you at that time. All right. We'll move now to the second presentation, and it will be presentation of the Mayor's Substance Misuse Task Force. So I'm going to call up Ms. Brenda Steen, community supporter, and she's going to be presenting tonight. And while she's getting set up, I do want to say, just last night, I saw a news report from Asheville, North Carolina, and saw where 6 people died at a hotel. At the same time, it was a fentanyl overdose. And you may ask, why are you talking about Asheville? It's 4 hours away. Well, the reason we're talking about Asheville is because Apex also is not immune to that. We've had some situations here. So we're celebrating tonight a 1-year anniversary of the Mayor's Substance Misuse Task Force. It's not a celebration, it's not anything you want to celebrate, but it's celebrating the moment that we're able to help more people and bring hope to more. And Ms. Steen tonight is going to present more information about that, about how we got started and where we are today. So thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, council members, for giving me the opportunity, but more importantly, being perhaps the first town in North Carolina to embrace a topic that most people would prefer not to talk about. So kudos to you for being on the cutting edge and being the peak of everything. I'm actually really excited to be here. It's a dark topic, but it is a reality. But I'm excited to be here because we are making progress. And I'm going to share that with you in about 12 slides. The first slide is a little personal for me, so if I can get through that one, the rest of it's going to be gravy, and you'll understand why. So I'm going to tell you a story about a mayor and an addict. And do I need to leave this on?
You can take it off.
Thank you so much. That addict happens to be my son, and just looking at that picture is really hard for me, even though that's about a dozen years ago. That is my son Holland, our son Holland. My husband Paul is here, and just give me a second. Holland Richard Steen was born April 4th, 1993 at Rex Hospital. He's the youngest of 3 boys. He was born here in Apex, he was raised here in Apex. He went to Salem Baptist Preschool, Olive Chapel Elementary School, Lufkin Road Middle School, and Apex High School. We attended church at Apex Methodist Church around the corner. Holland was honor roll student. He was an athlete. He was a musician. He played the drums. He played the piano. He had friends. Teachers loved him. He wasn't the typical profile of what people think of when they think of a drug addict. Everyone loved Holland, and we loved Holland, but unfortunately it doesn't appear that that was enough. Mental illness is a disease, and drug addiction is a direct component of mental illness. That's the backstory on Holland. The good news is, the bottom picture, he is there with Mr. Mayor, and together we have formed the Substance Misuse Task Force of Apex. I got through it, yay me, okay. I'd love for this to be interactive. I don't know, do you guys roll that way? No, with these masks, maybe not, but please feel free. Because again, we're really excited about this. So now we're going to move on to what we're doing. So we started about a year ago. Holland and Mr. Mayor, well, let me back up. You were the counselor at Apex High when Holland was there, right? Do you want to share a little bit?
Yeah, so I was a school resource officer. Many of you may know that, from 1998 to 2004. And in that time, I was able to meet Holland. Amazing young man, likable guy. I mean, very charismatic. You would love Holland. And but during that time, I did notice that Holland was challenged with many things, to the point where I was in the police department. And I think you'll share this story. Unfortunately, we had to, arrest Holland, and he was charged, and as a result, ended up going to prison for a time. So did his prison time, he got out, and he started helping more people. Ended up going to Asheville Recovery Center, working there, still in recovery. But he reached out to me and said, I want to do something. I want to help the next person. I don't want them to go through the same thing. But he also shared this. He said, you have to call out things in your own town as a mayor. He said there are things going on, and there are people who are ashamed to step forward and get help. There's a stigma. And that's what we have to try to break that wall down. And so I contacted Holland and said, come to my office, let's have a discussion. We sat on a couch, and we sat there for about 2 hours just discussing substance misuse, not only in Apex, but around the nation. But we were making it personal to Apex because he knew about many families that were struggling with this, but they were just afraid to take that next step because they were too concerned about what other people would think. So that's what was born out of that conversation. I said, hey, let's just bring awareness to it. I'll step up as a mayor and say, we got an issue in Apex. The police department in Apex has been really great working on it. The drug unit there to address the situation. But I won't get into too much of that until you finish your part, and then I'll kind of wrap it up.
You did great, thank you. And I did kind of skip over that part. So Holland's addiction sent him to 4 rehabilitations. And so for people who think 21 days in rehab is it, maybe for some people it works that way. It didn't work that way for us, and it doesn't work that way for a lot of people. Unfortunately, rehab number 4 was with the Department of Corrections, and he did 29 months in prison. And unfortunately, he came out of prison and started using again after that, which was devastating to everyone. And then something happened. That's his story. I won't share that. And he finally said, I need help. And that was October 15th, 2018. And he went to Asheville, and he found help in Asheville, which brings us back to Holland we did not feel like we had the resources in Apex to handle this. And I'm not saying that they don't exist. I'm just saying we did not feel supported. We did not feel like they were here. If you want a residential treatment program in this area, Healing Transitions is about the only place. And that's a little different environment. We don't have a 21-day facility. We don't have anything in Apex that I'm aware of. Wake County is underserved, and so most people have to leave this area to find treatment. And fortunately, Asheville does have a lot. And fortunately, Holland was able to find help there. So that pivots us back to why did we form the task force? So I'm not going to read this to you, but basically we want people to talk. First, we want people to know that it's happening so that if it happens to be happening to them, they're not withdrawing and isolating in shame, which is what I did. Once we can get them to the point where they understand that they're not alone, then we want to guide them and let them know that there are resources, there is education available, and that there are people that are willing to help them. So that is our mission, provide education, resources, and hope, primarily hope, for those that are affected. We have been creating awareness. You're going to see that as we go through the presentation. It impacts families, it impacts individuals, obviously. Law enforcement, Officer Carter is on the task force, and she speaks to us about what they deal with. I don't know if it's daily, it's frequently, and we recognize that there is a situation there, and we want to help. I would like to prevent somebody from being arrested if we can actually take them to get the mental health that they need. That's a long-term goal of mine, but that's something that, and it's not just mine, that's something that as a task force we recognize. You don't need to lock someone up and add to their shame. So we're working with law enforcement and the community. So we're here speaking to all of you and talking about the community. So I'll let you read through that at another time. All of this is on the Town of Apex's website, by the way. But why a task force? I think we've talked about that. Here are some stats that you can look at. It's growing. COVID has made it grow exponentially. Mr. Mayor, you may want to speak to this as well. We can show on record that we had 106 deaths since 2018, but those are only the ones that the police have been called to respond to. So there are probably a lot more that we can't quantify.
Are you saying in Apex?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I think that's significant.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, you think that's...
That's significant to me.
And that's straight from the crime analyst over Apex Police Department. And I'll add this too. So you may have seen information about the Narcan program that the police department started years ago. That has actually saved lives here in Apex. So it's kudos to the PD for having that available. And I think the fire may have it as well, but that's a very important component of this as well. So wanted to make that known.
So we have received a lot of media coverage, and the Town of Apex has as well. I do believe that we are emerging as a leader in tackling this. Day one, we actually had coverage in Carry Magazine, and the Town of Apex's website went live with this information. And then from that point, Mr. Mayor, you received emails and phone calls. Just about every member of the task force received emails and phone calls. And we began helping people. We actually began finding places for people to get help, which is amazing, I think. So goal number one, we created awareness. We continued. We had 4 media interviews over the course of the year from 17, as well as WREL. And WREL in April focused on the fentanyl issue, which is, as you mentioned earlier, a growing issue. And there actually is a separate nonprofit called Matthew's Voice that a mother that lived in Apex has formed, and I can send you that information if you're not familiar with it. But she is really pioneering that epidemic and making a significant impact, and we're partnering with her as well. So, awareness, check, check. Holland was interviewed in Suburban Living, and this actually, which is interesting to me because it wasn't social media, this was actually the print copy of that publication, which they do a great job because people are clearly reading it. We received the most amount of response from this news article. But I liked what Holland had to say. And, you know, these are Holland's words, but no one is born a drug addict. As a mother, and those of you that are parents, your child does not say, I want to be a drug addict. When I grow up, I want to be a drug addict. That's not how it happens. And I think for people who haven't dealt with it, they maybe don't understand it. So for Holland to come out and say this, I think helps other people recognize that they're not alone, and hopefully they'll reach out if they need it. Did I skip one? I did, okay. All right, so we have a qualified team on the task force. We have a certified peer support specialist. We actually have the executive director at Wake Med who handles the mental health unit. We have 5 individuals in active recovery ranging in age from 20 to 58. We have a law enforcement officer, which we discussed. We have credentials, addiction specialists, and counselors, 2 mothers, myself included, a nurse practitioner who specializes in young adult nutrition. We have someone with a PhD in psychology, a recovery addict for Wake County, and one amazing mayor. So these are pictures of the team. They were trying to be here tonight, but scheduling conflicts did not happen. You can see the diversity there. Everyone has a job, and this is what that looks like. So there's an events committee. We have the hospital outreach, law enforcement. Relatable resources are basically myself, the other mother, and the 5 people in recovery. And what that means is we can relate to what you're going through. We have a school outreach that Brooke, who was supposed to present tonight but had a family emergency, she is really working hard with that. Do you want to comment about that too?
Yeah, so obviously social media is how we're reaching people, but the one thing too, I think we're getting a lot of response from that based on the demographics. And I'll give you an example. Instagram. When we put out on Instagram, we're able to attract more of, I would say, the younger generation, and that's who we're trying to reach. But we really want to focus on the parents. And so Facebook, we've tried that, still working on that, and so Brooke is doing a good job. But I think that's what we really need to get parents to understand, like, we're in this with you, and we have resources available, and again, breaking down that wall of stigma and shame. So, but it's still an ongoing effort.
And we are, my husband and I are members of the Peak Church down the road, and Holland and I just did a podcast last week with Pastor Meyer over there. That podcast is going to drop within a couple of weeks. And I got really real and raw with my 1-hour interview with Kyle. That's going to be pushed out through, I'll call it the Christian community, but the Peak is very non-denominational, if you will. From that, we're hoping to form more alliances with other churches because we recognize that people do go to their pastors when they have these type of concerns. And actually, Pastor Meyer has come to me and said, I'm not really sure what to do with these people. I don't know where to send them. So that drives people back to the task force to help people navigate that slippery road. So again, we're trying to build a community, whether it's the schools, which again, Brooke is working on, the churches. We're hoping to work maybe something with Apex High during prom night. We are trying, and I think we're making great strides.
And to your point, I just want to add that we have 2 school principals who want to join the task force because they believe they need to be at the table, because they can share information that we may not know or have or knowledge about. So I think that's a good point.
And do you know, is Brooke targeting the high schools and the middle schools in terms of her outreach?
I believe so.
Yes. So the young lady, she's, I think, 19. She's on our task force. Brittany, yes. So that's the reason we have her on there, so she can give us that information where we may not know, so she can relate to that age group.
So Brittany is about 19, and she has been in recovery for about 3 years. Ben is in his 50s. He's been in recovery about 6 years. Brooke, who is leading the charge of the task force these days, she's in recent recovery. She actually went to Asheville Recovery Center, and someone introduced her to Holland, and she said, how can I live in Apex and not know that we have a task force like this? She came out of recovery, she came home, and she's on fire. So I'm sorry that she couldn't be here tonight. She is on fire. And this is her, she is not working right now. She lost her mother tragically last year. This task force is giving her purpose. And for people who are in recovery, they need purpose. They need something to make them want to get up every day and have something successful. So this task force is really, and she's perfect at that role. Who else is in recovery? Georgiana is in recovery. Holland is in recovery. I think I've hit them all. This is all on the website, and I feel like I'm taking too much time. But these people are really, this actually, it's important that I take this time. This is the team, and these people are passionate, and they're volunteers, and they've exposed themselves, especially for the people in recovery. To talk about this is hard. It's really hard to say, I'm in recovery, or I'm a parent of an addict. It's very difficult. But if we can provide hope to just one more person, then we're hoping that we're making a difference in that way. So we have resources on the Town of Apex's website. We break it out into categories that we think will help people. And again, we're clicking off our goals with this. In the past year, we've assisted about 75 individuals. It's hard to quantify. We've counseled at least 50 families one-on-one. Those are phone calls that we've had with people trying to connect them where they need to be. We've participated in about 20 community forums with 4 different schools, 3 community events, and we're going to be at Peak Fest again this year. We did have a meet and greet with the Vice Department, with Apex PD. We have people actively involved in AA meetings, and then we also have people working. There is a 24-hour hotline for people who are struggling, and so 2 members of our task force man that hotline, which I think is really impressive. We have a lot more to do, so we will come back next year at this time and let you know how far we've come. But in the interim, we're looking to hopefully work with the high schools and do something with prom night. We are having a community concert July 9th. We will be at Peak Fest. We're going to continue to expand the social media presence, and as I mentioned, we're going to work with local churches. Questions? I can see your eyes smiling.
So I had one. You mentioned the lack of facilities in the area and the fact that Asheville had more, or you guys have to go all the way out there. And I was wondering who runs this kind of facilities, and why is there an inequality in the geography of the where they are right now?
They're mostly private. I'm going to use Apex as an example. So just driving down Olive Chapel Road, what do you see? Houses. So you make more money off of putting 4 houses on an acre than you do building a facility that a banana may not want in their backyard, right? So it has to be a partnership where the community wants it, number one. You have an investor willing to buy the land and build it. Or maybe the investor comes first and then the community determines whether or not that's going to happen. So you see where I'm going. It's regular economic development. So you need to have someone that wants to build it, and then you need to have the resources available for that to happen. And I'm guessing that it's not existing in Wake County because there are so many other units of economic development that bring more money. That's my off-the-cuff opinion.
And the ones in Asheville are not from Buncombe or the city of Asheville facilities. They're the private ones? Okay.
They're private.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say thank you for coming and talking, and I want to say thank you, Mr. Mayor, for leading this task force. As a person who's been on both sides of this equation, as a drug prosecutor at the federal level, I've prosecuted drug overdose cases. As a federal defense attorney, I represent many folks who, as you said, I've never met a parent who said, I really want my son to be a federal prisoner one day. Never happens. Mm-hmm. This is a story that needs a face, and the thing that I've found that in the past, I used to say that we were fighting the war on drugs, but I don't think that's the appropriate term. I think it's more we need to really come up with a strategy for addiction. Because if you deal with that, then you can deal with the other aspects, the supply lines and all of that. But to get there, you got to have a face. And I want to say thank you to you for coming forth to not only talk about your story and your son's story, because these are personal stories. And from my experience, you don't get the attention unless there is a personal face. And I think that's a lot of the stigma. Many folks will not admit or talk about the problems or feel shame because they want to say it's their problem and not my problem. But ultimately, it is all of our problem. And this task force is something that we can use as a council to help allocate the appropriate amount of incentives as well as resources to ensure that we're dealing with this problem. Because if we don't deal with it, the thing that's important for us all to remember is every Apex family is still somebody we've got to make sure that we're taking care of. So thank you for bringing this to our attention. And I'll tell you, you have my full support, and I'll do everything I can to continue to champion this cause. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just want to echo what Councilmember Gray said. Thank you so much for your courage and your voice and sharing your story. It's very powerful. And I will also do, I'm optimistic about some things I'm not at liberty to talk about yet, but I think we may have some things coming down the pike that might be helpful in the future. So we'll just stay tuned. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the
And
opportunity.
Barry, want to do this, you want to call the other two up real quick, I know for the sake of time, to present their story.
Mr. and Mrs. Stevenson?
Can y'all just come up real quick, and we'll wrap it up?
Hello, good evening. My name is William Stevenson Jr. Everybody calls me Will. This is my lovely wife, Diane. We've been married 35 years, and we raised 5 sons in Cary. We were asked to come speak tonight and on this issue. And we were asked to speak for 5 minutes or so. We know that our story, 5 hours and we would just be hitting the tip of the iceberg. It's, you see, our story began about 12 years ago, and this disease has claimed the life of 2 of our sons. And in May 30th, 2018, Parker, our 3rd son, overdosed from a fentanyl-induced heroin overdose. Did he know it had fentanyl when he bought it? We don't know the answer to that. Did he know it was almost all fentanyl when he injected it? I would say probably not. And we know that it was fentanyl-induced because of the toxicology reports. It was almost all fentanyl, actually. 3 weeks ago, we lost our oldest son, William Stevenson III, to an opioid overdose. We have no toxicology reports on that yet. Since the passing of Parker, my wife Diane has gotten real involved in drug abuse groups, all kinds of different groups, and she's on social media a lot. I often see her on this one particular one, Faces of Opioids on Facebook. It's basically where addicts get on and they talk about the good and bad. And she's always been real good about those that are doing well, praising them, and those that are really struggling, she really encourages them and prays for them. And she tries to do just about everyone that gets on there, from what I can tell. Now, since our second son's passing 3 weeks ago, we've decided as a couple that we really want to get involved. We really want to do something. We feel like if we could save one life, it would be worth it to us. Of course, we would hope to save more than that, but you know, our phones are on 24/7. We have emails, we have social media, we have, texting, whatever it takes, we are willing to do. Whatever, whenever, however, we can be a help or an assistant to anything that transpires in the future. I didn't really come here tonight with any numbers, but you can Google them. But I do know this. Several years ago, we were told that the average death age of an overdose was 23-24 to 33-34. I've been told just recently that number's gone down to like 18, 19, 20 years old. That tells me that, you know, when this disease started infiltrating our colleges and then into our high schools, I believe now it's filtering down to our middle schools and maybe even our grade schools, which is really scary to think about. I know that when Parker passed in May of 2018, the police officers told us that evening at the hospital that that same very day, there were 5 overdoses. 3 were fatal in this area, just this area right here. And then 3 weeks ago when William passed, the Cary police officer told us at the scene that just a few hours before that a 19-year-old young man had passed from an opioid overdose. My second boy, Martin, posted something on social media just not too long ago that said, you know, I know cancer is a huge thing these days, and as it should be, but we really need to concentrate on this opioid epidemic because it is killing our young people every day. They're dying every day in handfuls. And I'm going to, in closing, I just want to thank Mayor Gilbert for reaching out to me a few weeks ago. I believe it was a week before William passed, and I believe I shared then we had a son that was struggling. And I wanted to thank Brooke Cook for taking our phone calls and speaking with us in regards to our story. And with that being said, I'm going to shut up and let my wife speak. Thank you.
We do have 2 faces, and this here, this is our son Parker. One moment. This is Parker. And this is William. Brooke asked Will and I to share our story and how addiction has impacted our family. Addiction has rattled our family to the core. Not only has it affected our immediate family, but our children's grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and our circle of friends. For us, it has strained relationships, caused financial hardships, trust issues, worry that we would lose a child, fear, sleepless nights, always on alert, tears of disappointments, and a lot of time praying to keep the glimmer of hope and unwavering faith. As Parker and William's mom, I always felt that if I gave up hope, everyone else would too. So I never gave up hope, even 3 weeks ago. The road to addiction has been very dark and very lonely. Will and I have lived it for a while without telling others. We became victims of our son's addiction. It wasn't until we started sharing our story about our firstborn and his struggles that we were truly able to start finding resources that were available for mental health and where to start to the road of recovery. There were many years of relapses, rehabs, counseling, arrest, and for William, time spent in and out of jail. There are pictures in my head that I will never be able to forget. Unfortunately, but fortunately, I had found both of my boys on different occasions after overdosing at their own homes. I was able to call 911 for assistance, and Narcan did save their lives on multiple times. Now for Parker. Parker would readily admit that he was a mama's boy. He was a great writer and he was very passionate about his conservative views. He loved music and he loved playing the guitar. He was athletic and loved by so many. His path of addiction started with pills and it eventually led to heroin. The drug that calls your name after one time of using it. That's all it takes is one time. He was a prisoner in his own body. Without it, he couldn't sleep. He developed night sweats. And he had horrible restless legs. I'm going to go, there were a lot more years in between this, but eventually he did find the love of his life. And we loved her too, and we still do. He had purchased a home. He had a great job. And he came to us and he was asking for help. He knew he was struggling and they had a baby on the way. And he really wanted to go get the help that he needed so he could continue down this path of success. So we found him a rehab facility. After rehab, he got home, and 3 weeks later, we got the dreaded call. That was May 30th of 2018. He had overdosed, and at this point, he was leaving a 3-year-old, fatherless, a wife who was now a widow, and a baby that was to be born. She now carries her dad's name. Her name is Riley Parker. It has left a hole in our heart forever. But through this process, we were able, the U.S. Attorney's Office picked up the case, and so it was in the federal courts. And we were able to go to court. It was 4 days. And the dealer ended up receiving 2 life terms in the federal prison for distribution of heroin and fentanyl, resulting in the death. He will serve both life sentences concurrently, along with 30 years for possession with intent to distribute a quantity of heroin, and then an additional 10 years for having a firearm, and he was already a felon. That was quite an event, just going to court and hearing a lot more about the details of Parker's illness. We even were told that when one of Parker's friends spoke with the dealer and said, "Hey, did you hear that last night Parker Stevenson passed?" And in order for the dealer to make it right, he gave this individual free heroin. So anyway, when word got out in Cary that Parker had passed, most people thought that instead of it being Parker, that somebody had just made a mistake. It wasn't Parker. It had to have been William. So anyway, it was not William, it was Parker. And the last line in his obituary read, "Parker's disease cannot touch the pure and true parts of him. It never did and it never could. His heart was pure and his love for his family was so deep. That love will always remain." I know it will with Will and I. So now I'm just going to touch quickly on William. Like Will said, it was a 12-year battle. That's a long time in addiction. He'd had so many overdoses that we lost count. Slowly, while William was alive, we grieved his loss. Even his brothers did. They felt like the William that they knew and loved was gone. William, He had great work ethic. He had a servant's heart, and he would literally give you the shirt off his back. He loved helping others. Even while he was struggling, he would want to help others. And he did. We know he did. We've heard many, many stories just the last 3 weeks since his death. But over the course of time, we watched him lose his job that he absolutely loved, his home that he absolutely loved, and his relationship with his daughter. I'm going to skip forward to the last month. William was actually released from jail December the 10th. And I begged. I didn't want him to come home after talking with the lawyer, but it was really between he and his lawyer. He was actually going to become an informant. And I was very scared for my family and for my child, because I knew that would be very hard for William to do. And the last week of his life, he was really, really stressed. He was really stressed from things that people have told me and the things that he was going through. And we knew Christmas Eve that he was using again. And it broke our hearts, and it broke my boys' hearts, because they weren't too sure that he needed to come Christmas Eve, but they wanted to do it for William and to do it for Will and I. Of course, he let us down. But anyway, another image that this mother will always have in her mind is when my son Martin was coming to find us the day that we had to come from Beach to Cary. William was staying at a hotel, and that's where he overdosed. And my oldest grandson Mason's 8 years old, and he just loved his uncle. They had a very good relationship, and he just loved him. And he knew that William was sick and had been struggling. But they came to see us, and his wife came in first with their 3-year-old, and I was like, well, where's Martin and where's Mason? And Cassidy said, well, they're coming. Martin had just shared with Mason that William had passed, and Mason was having a really hard time. And I'll never forget that image of the two of them coming through the door. And my son was holding Mason. He was just holding him tight. And the tears were just rolling down his cheeks. And we just did a three-person hug. And I don't even know if I said anything. I really don't. But just to see the look on Mason's face was something that I will never forget. Will and I have chosen not to stay under this cloak of silence because addiction has taken our sons. We will get through this valley because we know that our strength comes from the Lord. Our boys are now free, and we are both out of bondage, and we are at peace, and we do want to continue to share our stories. Goodbye is not forever, but love is. And I want to share one last thing, and I'm just going to share this as quickly as I can, but it was a song that I found just a couple of days after William had passed. And I feel like this, probably a lot of parents that go through addiction have feel like they could write this same song. And it goes like this. I can see the path you've chosen. We both know where it's going. I'm afraid of how your story's gonna end. And as scared as I am, I know this could be the last chance to stand between you and forever. It would be easy just to talk about the weather. It would be easy just to look above the wave. But I love you too much not to say anything. Without the truth, my love means nothing. Sometimes love isn't anything but easy. If I was trapped in a burning building, you would be the first one running, bursting through the front flames to rescue me. I can see your walls are crumbling. So now I'm the one who's running to save you from the fire that you can't see. It would be easy to talk about the weather. It would be easy to look beyond the wave. But I love you too much not to say anything. Sometimes love is anything but easy. I can't paint your prison walls a brighter color and never tell you of the one who set me free. I can't leave you locked in your chains any longer. So let me lead you to the one who holds the key. I love you too much not to say something. Without the truth, my love means nothing. Sometimes love is anything but easy. Anything but easy. Thank you for letting us share our story.
Mr. and Mrs. Stevenson, I really appreciate you coming tonight and sharing that story. And as Councilman Gray mentioned, it's the stories that people need to hear that helps us, become better, successful in what we're trying to do with the task force. They need to hear directly from you. So keep telling your story.
Thank you.
And we will stand with you.
Thank you.
God bless you all. All right. Got a question?
Not a question.
Okay, go ahead. Yep.
It's never easy to hear these types of stories, but if you've never been touched by or have a family member or friend that's been affected by addiction, it's hard. It's hard to watch them struggle. It's hard to sit back and be powerless in this, because that addiction is all encompassing. And I have someone very close to me that's dealing with addiction. And just, I hope you never have to deal with it. But this is such a worthy thing to do, this task force, to give resources to people, to give education to people. You've got my full support on all of this.
Thanks again. All right, are the Cougars still here? They go, they left. Okay, we'll move right along. We'll move now to consent agenda. All consent agenda items are considered routine to be enacted by one motion with the adoption of the consent agenda and without discussion. If a council member requests discussion of an item, the item may be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Haven't heard of any type of changes with the consent agenda. Hearing none, so is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
I second it. Sorry.
Motion second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, we'll move now to setting of the regular meeting agenda. Again, have not received any updates on the agenda. Are there any recommendations? Okay, with that, is there a motion?
Motion approved.
All right. Motion second, discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right. Move now to public forum. This is a time where the community can speak about concerns or issues, suggestions for us, for the community, and Madam Clerk. All right, we have one. Okay.
We received this from our email. To whom this may concern, my name is Cassie Langdon. I live at 4809 Rhythm Drive, Apex, which is in the Harmony Glen subdivision. I am the president of the HOA and am here on behalf of the 28 homes and more than 100 people in our community. I want to urge the review panel not to approve the major site plan for the proposed Felton Grove High School development. Before writing to you, I have had the opportunity to review many of the town and school systems development proposals, traffic studies, as well as previous meeting minutes from where many others spoke against annexation and development of this project. Our subdivision has one entry and exit at the intersection of Rhythm Drive and Stevenson Road. This entrance is less than 1,000 feet from one of the proposed entrances to the high school at Stevenson Road and Dairy Down Lane. A Town of Apex traffic study notes that the school entrance is expected to receive more than 1,000 additional vehicles entering and 1,000 vehicles exiting this intersection every morning and afternoon. The study suggests that Stevenson Road be modified from the current 2 lanes to include turn lanes, traffic signals be added at Stevenson Road and Dairy Down Lane, Stevenson Road and Thriftwood Lane, Stevenson Road and Sunset Lake Road, as well as suggested at Stevenson Road and Smith Road, all in less than 1 mile. These plans also call for the construction of a sound wall to separate homes from the property's parking deck, football stadium, and many parking lots and athletic fields. I don't know if you are personally familiar with where we live, but I can assure you the area cannot handle this type of infrastructure. During peak traffic times, even with the noted improvements, the grade assigned to traffic in the area will continue to be an F. I asked the school board during their latest community meeting if there were any other high schools in Wake County that were placed in a location where all the roads within several miles or less are only 2 lanes. They were not aware of any. This proposed major site plan still does not meet all of the listed UDOs as it is not compatible with the community. They have failed to make any significant changes, do not plan to add traffic signals at each location where the study suggests. Furthermore, the roads they are trying to use as entrances are privately owned, and the proposed use of the private roads is the subject of an unresolved lawsuit between WCPSS and the landowner. Attached below is a map of state-maintained roads in the area showing Dairy Down Lane and Thrift Road Road as privately owned. Every day, 1010 Road and Sunset Lake Road already experience gridlock during peak traffic times. The expansion of 1010 Road has been postponed by the NCDOT and is not set to be completed until around 2029. Even with an expansion, this would not relieve the immediate problem that is the narrow 2-lane road that is Stevenson Road. We come to you out of concern for our community. We fear being locked in our subdivision every day by more than 1,000 new vehicles, in addition to the interchange under construction at I-40 and Sunset Lake Road, less than 1 mile away. We fear the noise generated by 2,500 high school students and staff, sporting events, and vehicles. We fear for traffic safety of the people and children who live and play here. We fear being driven out of our homes, losing property values, and being forced to leave Apex. Please decline the proposed construction of Felton Grove High School. If you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to contact me, Cassie Langdon. And council has received a copy of this.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, so that was the last one, so we'll close public forum and move now to updates by Manager Crosby.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I have about 30 minutes of updates. I'm just kidding. So a few things actually. I want to make you all aware of Black History Month and our celebration next week on the 17th at 7 o'clock at the Holly. Mike Wiley will be performing Tired Souls, and tickets can be found on our website. We're also preparing for Women's History Month for the month of March, and we will be recognizing women-owned businesses. So we're asking all women-owned businesses to register on our website so that we can recognize you. We are soliciting input from residents on a number of things. One is our ARPA survey, or our American Recovery Plan survey, so that we can get feedback on residents on how to spend the funding. And the survey is open through February 15th. It's a super short survey, and more information can be found on our website on upcoming question and answer sessions. Our Think Apex nominations are open for businesses, nonprofits, and youth until the end of February. So we're asking residents to nominate people that have made a significant impact on the town of Apex. We're also looking for information from our residents about or residents should look for information in the utility bills on the electric utility service. That survey will be open in March. We also will have our annual flushing of our water system. The process has been extended, and it will be from February 25th to April 13th. During that time, we will also be flushing our hydrants. Our Vision Zero survey is open through the end of February, and Vision Zero is an initiative to eliminate transportation-related fatalities and serious injuries by 2035. So we are asking residents to provide input on that. And last but not least, I always tell you all how much I appreciate our staff. We have awesome staff, and I think I have the best assistant town managers that anybody could ask for. And one of our town managers was recognized this past week at the state conference for city and county managers. So I want to congratulate Sean on his recognition as the best town manager. And with that being said, that ends my updates.
All right.
Any questions for me?
There's speech from Mr. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I think we've embarrassed him enough this week.
Thank you, Manager Crosby.
All right, thank you.
All right. All right, move now to closed session 1. Possible motion to go into closed session pursuant to NCGS 143-318.1185A5 to discuss the town's negotiating position with respect to acquisition of real property.
So moved.
All right,
Second.
motion second. Discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, we're going to closed session. Trustee Burke.